No.
Okay, let's just make sure we're all ready to start. I'm going to give everyone another moment to join us, all our friends in Zoom and YouTube. Okay, and I think we're ready to welcome our awesome guests this evening. So hello everyone and welcome to P&P Live. My name is Leah and I'm a bookseller at Politics and Prose, and I have the pleasure of being your host today. I am delighted to be also partnering with our friends across the pond with Waterstones Wimbledon for this event as well. So thank you all so much for joining us and tuning in this virtual format, which continues to allow us to bring these amazing authors and their important books to readers like you. And I'm so excited to welcome our very special guests this evening, Tomos Roberts and Eva Chen. You can click on the link we're about to drop in the chat box to get your own copies of Tomos's awesome book, The Great Realization, as well as, of course, check out Eva's awesome books. If you have a question for our guests during this evening, you can click that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and add one there. And at the end of our chat, our guests will have time to answer your questions. You can also vote on the questions you really want answered. And as always, we ask, please remember that this is a creative, safe space, and we ask that friends be respectful of one another in their questions and comments. And again, thank you so much for joining us. So now on to the event you're all waiting for. It is my honor to introduce poet, filmmaker, and now author, Tomos Roberts. Tom, welcome. Tomos, aka Tomfoolery, is a spoken word poet who has produced numerous live shows and online videos sharing words and insights that have challenged the world around us. Inspired while homeschooling his siblings, Tomfoolery wrote The Great Realization, contributed words of hope and resilience in this strangest of times. Since its release in April, it has been viewed by over 60 million times and has been translated independently into multiple languages, from Arabic and Hebrew to German and Spanish. And tonight we are celebrating the release of the picture book of The Great Realization, turning this moving video into a new form that can continue to be shared for bedtime, along with the beautiful art by Nomoco. And tonight, Tomos is joined by the fabulous Eva Chen. Eva is author of several whimsical and empowering picture books, including Juno Valentine and the Magical Shoes, A is for Awesome, and the upcoming Roxy, the Last Unisaurus Rex. A former editor-in-chief of Lucky Magazine, Eva has also written for numerous publications, including Elle, Vogue, New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. And she's currently the head of fashion partnerships and Instagram. So now it is my pleasure to pass it over to Tom and Eva. The virtual stage is yours.
Well, Leah, thank you so much for the amazing introduction. And you basically did my job of introducing the amazing Tom. I myself was very, very moved by the video that you released in April. My kids have watched it. I've watched it. I've sent it on to several parents, and we all love it. So I think we should kick off this conversation with a reading of the book. So let's get started. Let's get down to that. So I'm passing it over to you now.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, both of you. They were very warm. They were very warm words. Okay, I will begin by reading this copy of the book. This is the US edition, which is why there is a Z in the title. Us Brits like to spell that word with an S, but there we go. Okay, I'm gonna try and hold it up. I'm gonna try and hold it up so you can see best. Tell me the one about the virus again, then I'll go to bed. But my boy, you're growing weary, sleepy thoughts about your head. Please, that one's my favorite. I promise just once more. Take me back to 2020. That's all I'm asking for. Okay, snuggle down, my boy, though I know you know full well. This story starts before then, in a world I once would dwell. It was a world of waste and wonder, of poverty and plenty, back before we understood why hindsight's 2020. You see, the people came up with companies to trade across all lands, but they swelled and got much bigger than we ever could have planned. We'd always had our wants, but now it got so quick. You could have anything you dreamed of in a day and with a click. We noticed families had stopped talking. That's not to say they never spoke, but the meaning must have melted and the work-life balance broke. The children's eyes grew squarer, and every toddler had a phone. They filtered out the imperfections, but amidst the noise, they felt alone. And every day the skies grew thicker, till you couldn't see the stars. So we flew in planes to find them, while down below, we filled our cars. We'd drive around all day in circles. We'd forgotten how to run. We swapped the grass for tarmac, shrunk the parks till there were none. We filled the sea with plastic because our waste was never capped. Until each day, as you went fishing, you'd pull them out, already wrapped. And while we drank and smoked and gambled, our leaders taught us why. It's best to not upset the lobbies, more convenient to die. But then in 2020, a new virus came our way. The governments reacted and told us all to hide away. But while we all were hidden, amidst the fear and all the while, we dusted off our instincts. We remembered how to smile. We started clapping to say thank you and calling up our mums. And while the car keys gathered dust, we would look forward to our runs. And with the skies less full of voyagers, the earth began to breathe. And the beaches bore new wildlife that scuttled off into the seas. Some people started dancing. Some were singing. Some were baking. We'd grown so used to bad news, but there was good news in the making. Old habits became extinct, and they made way for the new. And every simple act of kindness was now given its due. And so when we found the cure and were allowed to go outside, we all preferred the world we found to the one we'd left behind. But why did it take a virus to bring the people back together? Well, sometimes you get sick, my boy, before you start feeling better. So lie down and dream of tomorrow and all the things that we can do. And who knows, if you dream hard enough, maybe some of them will come true. We now call it the Great Realization. And yes, since then, there have been many. But that's the story of how it started and why hindsight's 2020. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, you have a captive audience of nearly 100 people listening, and that was absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much for that.
How many did you just say?
I think almost 100 people are on. We are at almost 80 people. So
hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to this.
Yeah, and thanks for tuning in. And I want to remind everyone that there's a Q&A button on the bottom. And so please ask your questions. And if you see a question that someone else has asked that you would like answered, you can uprank it. And oh, one just popped up. Wow, that really worked. Well done. I should also use that moment. Like if it works so well, I'm going to also tell you to pick up this book from Politics and Prose in the on the link in the chat section. Okay, so more questions, but I'm going to kick off the questions. We have about 15 minutes for me to pepper you with questions, Tom, and then we're going to open it up to audience Q&A. So now, correct me if I'm wrong, you wrote this book for your 7-year-old siblings, right? Can you tell me a little bit about the origin story of this amazing book?
Gladly. I wrote it for them. I also, in a really strange way, I kind of wrote it with them, ish. You know. So I was, you know, my kind of experience of lockdown. I'd been working as a freelance filmmaker. I was working for this big company, and I was actually making and editing the little videos that would go out on their Instagram page. And because I was freelance, when lockdown hit, my work just vanished, and I had to move back in with my dad because I had no income, and I have a 7-year-old brother and sister. Now my dad is an epidemiologist, so you know we need them more than ever in this time, and he was actually called back in to work in the hospitals in the NHS. So really, I did. You know, my experience was so strange. Suddenly, I'd gone from, you know, this one life in the space of a very short space of time to being with these little children. And obviously, the schools were shut, and they would send us work to do, but you know that doesn't take all day. You know, so I was trying to find ways to fill our days and to have little projects. And you know, I've got a all right understanding of filmmaking, and I've got some of my own kit. So yeah, we launched our YouTube channel and our Facebook and our Instagram channels, and started making these little poems that we would turn into videos. And the great realization was the fourth one that we made. And I'd say the first three, you know, we were really starting to understand, you know, how to do all these various jobs. By the time we got to the fourth one, I felt really comfortable doing this. And so I was able to think a lot more about the message of the poems that were being written. And I don't know how it was for you, and I still think it's this way quite a lot, but I felt like there was such a aura of anxiety, you know, and almost despair, really, for so many people. So many of my friends had lost their jobs, and you turn on the TV and, you know, you find out how many people have died in your country that day. And it I think it can have a really profound effect on like people's mental health. I know it did on me. So the challenge we set ourselves was to see if we could find a optimistic or a hopeful message, you know, and not a cheap one, because I think if you're experiencing hardship and then you go on the internet and you see this poet from London trying to tell you it's all for the best, I think that could make you, you know, not have the reaction that we were hoping to provide. So we were genuinely looking for if there was a real positive message to be shared. And the best we could come up with was that maybe this moment was so disruptive. And, you know, we kept hearing people say, I can't wait for things to go back to normal, you know, and I was thinking, well, you know, I don't think we had everything completely as we would have liked to have it before this virus came along. You know, there were things that we definitely could have been looking at. And so the hopeful message was, maybe, you know, we can use this time to reevaluate some of the imbalances in our lives, let's say. And, you know, together we sat down, and I asked my little brother and sister what they perceived to be the problems in the world. And my little sister, she was very concerned about fish in the oceans, getting caught up in plastic and getting washed up on the beach. I think she'd just watched maybe a David Attenborough or something. And my little brother, he was really concerned about some people having lots and lots of money and some people having no money. And I was like, great, we can get that in there. And so, you know, we just began to paint this picture of the world before, and then the virus, and then the ideal. And that's kind of how it happened.
Okay, I have so many questions. First
Sorry.
question, you said your dad is an epidemiologist, and you can answer this one quickly. What is his COVID routine like? How many times is he washing his hands a day? Is he in like triple face gear?
Well, not when he's not in face gear when he's at home, but when he's in the hospital, they're, you know, I know that they're really, you know, well protected in PPE, and I know they're washing their hands a lot. So yeah, at the beginning when things were just starting to unfold around, I think, March time of this year, it was, you know, it was really interesting because, you know, so many people were asking questions about what was going on, and he was someone that I was calling a lot to get his perspective.
Well, maybe we can have him on a separate conversation. We can do an Instagram live. There we go. My next question is, your brother and sister were at the time of your writing 7 years old.
They still are.
They still are. Okay. What was 7-year-old Tom like? What was your favorite book? What was your favorite subject? Did you love school? Did you like to read? Were you reading yet?
I loved watching films. I read a lot. I did read a lot. When I was seven, I think I was deeply interested in Roald Dahl, as many 7-year-olds are. And I think I consumed everything that he had written. I really liked Danny, Champion of the World. I was terrified by the witches. Fantastic Mr. Fox. You know, I was tearing through those books and really, really enjoying them. In terms of school, I was quite like a performative little boy. Like I liked like getting up and you know, speaking in front of people. I was always quite interested in, even when I didn't necessarily know what to say. So yeah, I don't think my parents would tell you I was a very shy boy. I liked drama a lot.
And how did you get into like poetry? Did you study it at university? You were doing spoken word poetry. I believe I read that you were doing it in the streets of London. What was that experience like?
Yeah, well, I've gone through many like love affairs with different like forms, with different mediums. Like for a while, I really thought I wanted to be an actor. So, you know, I was trying to learn scripts and learn monologues and perform them. Then I was deeply infatuated with stand-up comedy. I just thought that this was the coolest thing. You know, when I started discovering the greats of stand-up, I couldn't believe how, you know, honest these people are. You know, I actually think stand-up comedians are the most honest people in our society, and they'll say the stuff that's right on the edges of, you know, right on the fringes of what's acceptable, and, you know, challenging really. So I was excited by that, and I started writing poetry because my phase shifted, and I got really interested in watching rap battles on YouTube. Like yeah, for a really long time I was so addicted. So I was watching like Don't Flop, King of the Dot, I think Smash URL you've got in the States. And I was just fascinated because, you know, people were having these battles with words and really, really taking each other to pieces. And, you know, and it wasn't physical. And I like that because, you know, you probably tell by looking at me, like I'm not a boxer, you know. So the idea that people could have such, you know, passionate confrontations with words, I just thought that was amazing. And it was after watching a lot of that I really became interested in how you could put words together and then get up and perform and make your statement. You know, I really didn't ever expect, I'm so thrilled, but I didn't ever expect to write poems that would be experienced written down. I always imagined performing them and saying them. And I guess that's why when I learned a little bit about filmmaking, I've tried to, you know, combine and merge all of those things.
No, I think most of the people watching probably don't know that the art of matching words to imagery and to illustration is actually, in a children's book, is actually a lot more complex than one realizes. Can you talk to us a little bit about the process, the actual process of putting this book together? You worked with a really acclaimed illustrator. What was that process like? How did you guys meet in the middle? Did you have to compromise on anything? Is there anything you would change about the book in hindsight?
Well, in hindsight, yeah. So I think a lot of wonderful people who are following my page have reached out to me, telling me how they are working on children's books of their own, and asking if I have any advice of, you know, of how to get a children's book made. And really, I think that the way it happened, in my situation is really, really unusual, I think, because I released this video. You know, I wasn't approaching publishers at the time. I just released this video, and that's all that I'd imagined it could be, and that was the only way I'd imagined telling that story. And, you know, in the course of a very short amount of time, it attracted a lot of attention. And something that was really, really cool about that is publishers started getting in touch and, you know, reaching out. And also what was really humbling was many of the people who were writing to, you know, to the page, to me at that time, were, you know, were saying, I would love this poem in the form of an illustrated book. And so that really gave me the belief, I suppose, that it could be, that it could be done. So, I spoke to some publishers, and I felt like I found a really great home with HarperCollins, and it's Egmont in the UK and it's HarperCollins in the US. And they basically said to me, here are some illustrators. I think they showed me about 5 illustrators who they had a really good relationship with and wanted to work on the project and were available to begin working straight away, because I think normally the process of creating an illustrated book is, they spoke to me about how it can, take up to
2 years sometimes.
Yeah, up to a year and a half, and we were attempting to do this in 3 months. From the time of having these conversations to the time of release, it was just 3 months. So it was really important to find the right person, but also someone who was prepared to dive straight into it, And yeah, Nomoco, when I saw her work, I completely fell in love with it for so many reasons. Like, I think she can tell stories with color, firstly, in an incredible way. I think that hers is a really beautiful line between abstract and literal, which, sometimes, particularly with a poem like this one, I think you don't necessarily want every thing that I speak about to be depicted literally. But then if it's too abstract, you can't maybe follow it. So I felt like she was so, able to walk that, to find that balance. And also, it was really, it felt like there was something meaningful about the fact that she was Japanese, because my little brother and sister, they're half Japanese. Their mum is Japanese, and we have the same dad and different mums. And so, in the last 7 years, I've had this whole Japanese side of the family, kind of come into my life, really. And so to work with a Japanese illustrator felt nice. It felt like giving like a nod to that side of the family.
3 months to create this book is literally, like, I don't know if you realize how warp speed that is, because honestly, sometimes it takes 2 years for a book to
Well, we all worked pretty. I've got to thank really the publisher and Nomoco, because honestly, I was in such a privileged position because the words had been written, so my part in it was done, and the words have really remained very much as they were in the online video. So really, it was the publisher and Nomoco who were working flat out, and they did so well. And for me, it was just coming in every day to give my little humble opinion.
Now, let's walk back to April. You uploaded this video on like April 29th, right? When did you know that this video was kind of like a thing? It was a big deal. Like, was it a call from one person in particular? Was it a specific celebrity being a fan of it or commenting on it? What was your light bulb moment that was like, oh my gosh, this thing has a life of its own?
Well, really, it escalated quite quickly. Well, as I told you before, we'd put 3 poems out before this one, and each of them we'd put them on our page, and each of them had gotten to about 50,000 views, which, I don't know 50,000 people. So I considered that pretty mind-blowing, to be honest. And I thought that they were going incredibly well. And then with this one, I expected, I had no reason to expect anything more than that, So what we realized after we posted it is just that it was climbing faster, I suppose. And after 2 days, I think it had a million views. And I think there's something about this number in our culture. A million of anything we consider to be a lot. That's a pretty whopping milestone. So when that happened, that's when I started to think, okay, people are responding to this piece. And I think the first person the first person who I suppose you know, we'd call a celeb who reached out was Jake Gyllenhaal. Sent me a really, really nice message on Instagram saying he loved the poem and he thought it should be turned into a book. And so that was pretty, you know, I've grown up watching him in Donnie Darko and Zodiac.
Like Jake Gyllenhaal casually sliding into your DMs. That's like,
Yeah.
okay, no big deal.
That's when you start to think something unusual is happening. And then after that, you know, it just kept going, and the higher it went, the faster it went, and the you know, I started getting the opportunity to do all these wonderful interviews. So I got to speak on the Today Show with Hoda and Jenna, and the Today Show in India, and in New Zealand and Australia, and Philip and Holly in the UK, and all of this from my bedroom, which was really bizarre because, you know, I think in one day I was like going across 5 continents, and I was like, this is pretty unexpected.
Well, did you change out of your, like the key question, did you change out of your pajamas for these interviews?
Only the top half.
Only the top part. There we go. Well, that's very important to know.
Yeah.
Okay, now I know that we have nearly 30 questions in the Q&A, so I do want to make sure everyone who asked questions has a chance to get them answered. And I want to remind everyone that the links to purchase the book are in the chat. So if you tap on chat, you will see the link. But let's do this. I see you're pouring some more beverage right now. Wait, is it like 10 p.m.? And
10:30 p.m.
10:30. Is
Yeah.
that coffee or is that wine?
This is a peppermint tea.
Peppermint tea. That is the most English thing I've ever heard in my life. I love it. Okay. First question that we have is from
Wine.
yeah. It's very English. I think like if you had a scone, that would like kind of level up the Englishness, but peppermint tea shall suffice. Okay. First question is from Vidushi, and several people upranked this question. Okay. So the first question is, how do you feel about hindsight 2020 now that we're almost wrapping up the year? And then Vidushi put a little smiley face, which is not really how I feel about the year with the smiley face, but how do you, Tom, feel about the year and hindsight?
Well, we will never forget this year, will we? Like that. I really feel, you know, if I said to you, you know, what were you doing in 2007? You know, maybe you'd have to think about it. I don't think we'll ever have to think very hard about what happened to us in 2020. You know, my hope, my deep hope is that 2021 can be the turn of a page for so many people that are struggling, because I think, you know, I think people are incredibly resilient, but, you know, they need good leaders. They need good leaders to make good decisions, and to look after people, because actually, you know, if that doesn't happen, then you know, then I think that it won't just be 2020. You know, it will stretch on and on and on into the future. And I think, yeah, I think that for me as a poet, when I discovered the, you know, the little play on words that was hindsight's 2020, that, you know, that I used in this piece, that was just something that fits so perfectly that I couldn't believe, you know, it couldn't have happened any other year, really. But yeah, it's amazing that this thing over.
To the next question, actually, because Lynn, that is her favorite line, and Lynn is saying that's she loves the line. That's why hindsight's 2020. It has so many meanings and so many different levels. But she wants to know what your favorite line in the entire poem is. And you can't say that's why hindsight's 2020, because that's cheating.
I think it's really hard to, you know, have a favorite part of something that's your own, because you know, it feels strange to do that. But I suppose I quite like the second interaction between the big brother and the little boy, where the little boy asks, why did it take a virus to bring the people back together? And then the big brother replies, because sometimes you've got to get sick, my boy, before you start feeling better. And I wrote that line genuinely because I was trying as best I could to, over this time, and particularly me looking after these two little kids, they ask so many questions, you know, every single day. And I'm 26 and I'm supposed to, as far as they're concerned, I'm the guy with the answers, you know, and I am so not the guy with the answers. And so the reason I wrote that little line is because I was trying to find a question that was big enough that it could kind of encompass so many of the things that I've been asked in the last 6 months by these two little kids. And, you know, asking effectively why it would take a virus to make people realize that we shouldn't abuse the planet, we should spend quality time with our families, we shouldn't abuse our bodies, we should maybe have a look at wealth distribution or our attitudes towards gender equality, race equality, sexuality equality, you know, all of these things. And I almost wanted to have this little boy just saying, like, why would it take something so chaotic for us to improve? And, you know, earlier you asked me who some of the authors that I grew up loving were. And I told you that Roald Dahl was a big one. Dr. Seuss was another massive one for me. And I think sometimes when you're telling like a story to a child, or a fairy tale almost, sometimes there is no good answer for why things are the way they are. And so you almost have to come back to the question with a kind of a circular answer, you know, an answer that doesn't necessarily mean anything, you know, sometimes you have to get sick, my boy, before you start feeling better. That doesn't, all it says is maybe that's just the way it is. You know, maybe the world just works like that. You know, maybe there's periods of illness, there's periods of wellness. You know, there's times of war and there's times of peace, and we've just got to exist within that circle. So I quite liked that interchange.
That exchange definitely felt very Roald Dahl-y to me, in the best way possible. And actually, I feel like we need to come up with a phrase. Like, there's Darwinism, there's Marxism, Dahl.
I liked what you just said, Dali.
Dahl-y, like Roald Dahl-y. I think maybe we make that a thing. Maybe we like coin our own hashtag.
I think you've got power for that, Eva.
There we go. Okay, so the next question is from Lillian West, also upranked quite a bit from everyone on this Zoom. So how do you think the reception of this poem has changed in 5 to 6 months after its conception? Do you think the positivity presented has waned or increased with time? So I guess the question is, like, do we think that we're in a more positive time than 6 months ago, or more despairing or negative time? For me personally, a little bit negative, because homeschooling is very challenging, but we're not going to go into that right now.
Well, I think when we were in March and April and May, which are like the first 3 months of our lockdown in the UK, at least, you know, I know every country had like a, you know, sort of a slightly different time frame. But when the poem came out, I really feel like it was brand new. You know, people didn't know, is this just going to be for 2 weeks? Everyone goes inside for 2 weeks and then it's all good. You know, people didn't know so many things, and I think the result of that was, one, that there was a lot of fear and anxiety, and two, there was a lot of, I feel there was a lot of kind of openness to the change of the situation. You know, the change was so fresh, you know, so people were realizing a lot of the things that I'm speaking about in this story. People were really realizing you know, what it was like to have a family dinner every single night, or to not commute, or to you know, we were seeing these images, weren't we, you know, amidst all of the you know, the chaotic imagery we were seeing on social media, particularly like John Krasinski with his Some Good News, which was glorious to watch, and dolphins swimming in the canals in Venice. And, you know, I saw one about all these little turtles being born on the beach of California, I think it was, and scuttling off into the sea. And that inspired one of the lines as well. And so I think it was a very difficult and very chaotic time, but I think people were very open to messages like this. What's happened from my perspective in the months that have passed is, I think it's, you know, it's gotten harder for people, because we're starting to realize how long this could go on for, and we're starting to realize the strain that it's putting on some industries and some families and, you know, economies and tensions. And I think we experienced a lot of that in the summer. And so, you know, I understand what you're saying, is what I mean when you say, you know, you're feeling less optimistic now. But, you know, my hope is that people can still find things to look forward to, you know, because if you've got that, I think you're best equipped to, you know, to deal with what's going on and to move through, you know, to operate in the world. And I really feel like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, if you think things aren't going to get better, I think that it becomes less likely that they will get better. If enough people believe that we're gonna collectively improve, then I think that becomes more likely. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
I hope that method works, because I will be believing that my homeschooling techniques will improve over time. Okay, I love this next question from Diana, who is a fellow poet. Diana says, I'm an aspiring poet, but I lack diligence and technique. Do you have any tips for improving my talent? I like that question. They're putting Diana, well done. You're putting yourself out there. Writing is incredibly hard.
Yeah, well, bless you, Diana. I've from my perspective, I know exactly what you mean about the struggles of writing. I think there have been so many times when I've wanted to be producing, you know, great poetry, and I sit down and there's just nothing there. I think for me personally, the time I get what we all like to call writer's block is when I haven't decided what, you know, I haven't made all these decisions before I start writing, and often actually writing is like the last thing I do. So with the Great Realization, you know, it began by observing, you know, how much fear and anxiety there was, and deciding that I wanted to try and inject some hope and optimism. You know, then I started thinking, well, you know, how can you do that? And I spoke to Eva earlier about this thought of, I don't want things to go back to normal. I want things to actually get better. And then I thought, okay, what's more hopeful? Is it more hopeful to set your poem in the present and say, I wish things would get better? Or would it be more hopeful to just decide that it happened, you know, and I was there and I lived in the future that I wanted to see? And so then I thought, okay, I'm there. And so what's the situation that my poem's going to take? And I decided, well, you know, every night at the moment, I'm reading a poem. I'm reading a bedtime story to my little brother and sister before they go to bed. So, you know, that feels like a really nice format for this particular message. And the reason I tell you all of that is because I still haven't written a single word of the poem, but once you've decided all of those things, and you've literally made the decisions all the way up until it's a big brother in the future reading his little brother the story of how the world was, the virus, and then how things got better. Once you've decided all of those things, it's not hard to write that poem, you know? And I really don't think that, you know, you spoke about technique in your question. I don't necessarily think that I've any technique that you don't have, and I really, really mean that. I've been writing poems for a long time, but you know, I haven't done a course or anything like this, and my rhymes are really, really simple. You know, I'm just rhyming like do with you and me with we. Like I'm not reinventing the wheel with poetry. If anything, my objective and my aim is to keep you know, to keep my language as accessible as possible, you know, because I love the thought that the same piece of work can be accessible to a 7-year-old little boy or little girl, and you know, my 90-year-old granny, or maybe someone who English isn't their first language, you know. And all of those things came into my thinking for writing this piece. So I wasn't writing poetry in the form that we are often thinking about it, which is, you know, really, really highbrow poetry that people study at university. Like I wasn't trying to do that. I was trying to write really simple, you know, really simple. And I was trying to put as much thought as possible into what the story was and what the message was. And so I think, you know, if you can find what you care about, and you will definitely, you know, care about things, because we all do, and you know, try and create a scenario in which you can tell a story about that thing that you care about, then I feel like you won't struggle as much with the poetry.
That is a great answer, Deanna. Thank you for asking that. I actually feel like anytime I have the opportunity to meet authors, I've gone to some of these book conventions, which Tom are no longer because of COVID. It's kind of depressing. You didn't get to go to any during your book tour, but I always like nerd out when I meet these authors who've published like dozens of books. And Deanna, one of the questions I always ask is like, how do you do it? How did you publish like 26 books? This I asked to an author named Jodi Picoult, who's like very famous in the US. I don't know if she's popular in the UK, but she's written like dozens of books. And her advice was like, just write, like don't overthink it. You just have to get that first draft out. And so Tom, turning the tables on you, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received, whether it's about writing, living in 2020, life in general?
Well, if it was about writing, it would be the best advice I ever received for writing was the removal of distractions, because getting to a place where you can organize your thoughts clearly, I don't think that's easy. It's definitely not easy for me, because I'll know that I want to do it, and I'll have that good intention, and then maybe I'll get a text, or maybe my little brother will come upstairs and see if I want to play fight with him, or maybe I'll think, oh, I'm kind of hungry. Maybe I'll go downstairs and, you know, see if there's anything good in the fridge, you know, or maybe, you know, maybe one in a billion things that can distract you will happen, and your brain will just go, zoop, and, you know, it becomes impossible, really, it does, to get your thoughts in order. And if you're trying to write, first you have to think, and thinking is not like, honestly, like actually concentratedly thinking. So, you know, when I want to write, I actually it really helps me to I'm personally not one of these people that writes over a desk or on a computer. I like to go to the park with my little notebook, yeah, and my football. So and I don't take my phone. So I leave my phone so no one can get me, and I take my notebook and I take a ball, and I will literally go to the park. And the reason I take a ball is just because, you know, I think it's quite good to I don't know, sometimes I just literally I must look really strange, but I just kick the ball around the park until like I've got my thinking straight. And it's like a mundane enough task that your body doesn't get distracted as much as I do when I'm sat down, you know. So I'm just kicking this football, and then whenever I want to, I just sit down on the floor with my little notebook. I'm like, right, okay, that's something I want to think about more, and then I'll get up and I'll keep going. So I wouldn't say it would work for everybody, but that's what works for me.
I mean, maybe I will try that. I am 9 years behind on a book proposal. Kate Hoyt, if you're watching, I'm working on it. And so maybe I will go to the park tomorrow with a ball and no phone. No, that gives me anxiety, like not having my phone with me. All right, we have about 3 or 4 minutes left for questions, and I know there are a few more that a lot of you.
Sorry, I ramble.
So let's go to this one from Jing Yi, who wants to know, what's your favorite book? We're going to go into rapid fire. So we're going to do like 10-second answers so I can get through as many questions as possible.
Okay.
First one, what's your favorite book?
Oh my goodness, it's like asking what's my favorite sibling. I love The Catcher in the Rye. I also love Endurance by Alfred Lansing. They're two books I love. I love Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. That book just blew my mind apart.
Okay, that was a 48-second answer, and so we gotta speed this up, Tom. No, I'm kidding. Okay, next question is, what's been your silver lining during these crazy times?
Figuring out that I really enjoy hanging out with 7-year-olds, particularly these two. And, you know, I was trying to, this will only take a minute and it's worth telling because it was just the best thing ever. My little brother and sister, I was trying to teach them biology for school. That was one of the things I had to teach them. And my little brother told me very confidently that the girl has an egg and the boy has a spoon, and the boy's spoon cracks the egg, and that's how babies are made. And my little sister was like, I don't think it's a spoon. And he was like, it's definitely a spoon. And so that was one of my highlights.
That's extremely cute. Okay, what age did you start writing?
I cannot remember, but I can remember that when I was 14, I wrote my first poem that I performed in a school assembly. I think I may have been playing around with things before that, but when I was 14 was the first time I wrote something, got up and performed it.
Okay, this is like a very random question, but I'm into it. What do you like to eat? What's your favorite food?
Ooh, I like spicy things. I'm addicted to spicy food. So I love putting chilies in pasta, or, you know, a really spicy pizza, or a good Indian takeaway.
But then the rest of the question is, what do your 7-year-old siblings love to eat?
Well, I was cooking every day for them on lockdown, and they tell me they like my cooking, but I try not to cook them boring things. So I try to make, you know, different things every day. Okay,
this is going to be hard for you to answer in 10 seconds. Which poet do you compare yourself to? Oh, this is a tough one.
I don't compare myself to any poet. I love John Cooper Clarke. I love Dylan Thomas. I also love J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, and Mac Miller. So take from that what you will.
Okay, what motivates you? I'll give you 20 seconds for that one.
I am motivated by the thought that you can speak things into being, and that, you know, your words and the words that you choose to use, and to publicly, you know, the things that you publicly speak about can change things around you. I think that's incredible. So I've always liked that thought.
All right, last 3. Do you have a degree in literature?
I have a degree in drama and English literature. Yeah.
Will you do a physical, actual, in real life book tour when COVID is over?
I would love that more than anything. And if people are still interested in my book when book tours are allowed to happen again, I will definitely do one.
And last question is, what is your hope and wish for 2021?
For 2021?
Mm-hmm. You can have more than 10 seconds for this one because I timed things quite well, if I may say so myself.
Thank you, Eva Chen. I've really enjoyed speaking to you. I think you do very cool things. My hope for 2021 is that, you know, there is less needless suffering, and the suffering that, you know, will come as a result of you know, this virus and so many other things that are going on in the world can be, you know, kept to a minimum by good leadership and, you know, careful management, and also people being kind to each other. You know, I think one thing that I've really liked about this time is, I know it's been really difficult, but I've seen firsthand a lot of neighborly acts, and then community acts, and then societal acts, and all this, and people being kind to each other. And I think that's got to be where it's at. Like there's something really important there.
Well,
So
thank you. No, that was a great answer. And I want to remind everyone watching, all 85 of you, 83, I feel like people know that I'm wrapping it up, that if you go into the chat section, there are 2 links for the US viewers. You can order from Politics and Prose, mangled that, Politics and Prose, which is an amazing bookstore in the DC area, and the iconic Waterstones, where I have spent so much money when I've been in London and Oxford and England. I lived in London for a while, and I love that bookstore, all the Waterstones bookstores as well. So please pre-order the books, they're out, and you can follow Kids in Prose to learn about future events like this. And so I'm going to throw it back to Leah, but before I do that, Tom, we're going to do an awkward Zoom photo. So,
oh, nice.
Throw sign, ready, set. Did it? Okay. Throwing it back to now.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that was amazing. Thank you both so much for contributing your insights, as well as for those awesome questions, everyone. So many thanks to Tom and Eva for joining us this evening and sharing your words. And of course, thank you all viewers for joining us. Eva, you already said it all, that I hope you all go grab a copy of The Great Realization. As she already said, you can get it through us or through the link we dropped. You can get through us or through Waterstones Wimbledon. And as always, you can also find out about more upcoming events on our website, as well as check out older ones on our YouTube. And of course, thank you all so much. I hope you all keep reading widely and expanding your world and exploring new ones, and stay safe. So thank you all so much again.
Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Bye, guys.